Day one of the 2025 NFL Draft is over, and we are now on to day two. And I think the biggest surprise so far is seeing Shedeur Sanders slide to day two. But frankly, I expected that personally. But it has been a fun draft so far, if not a predictable draft so far. There's been a couple little trades up, but a lot of the players are going where we expected them to go, or at least in the range of where we expected them to go. There have been a couple fun, exciting trades like the Browns and the Jags that definitely shook some things up. But players still fell where we thought they were going to fall, which has definitely made this draft a little bit more predictable in that sense. But, Shedeur Sanders, I had a really, cool video centered around how he was going to be a bust and a reach for any team that took him. But now that he's falling to day two, I frankly don't think he's a bust, or I don't think he's a weakness of this draft now. Now, people may say he's a loser of this draft now, but any team that he goes to is obviously going to be strengthened and specifically wants him. So, honestly, I don't think that's a lose-lose scenario. So, Shedeur, you're safe for now. So, today, let us look at 3 of the NFL draft losers from the 2025 draft, day one. The first loser I have is the Chicago Bears, who draft Colston Loveland. And now Colston Loveland, let's not cap real quick. He is a good player, and I think he's going to be a really solid tight end for the Bears for a good while. But I don't think he was worthy of a top 10 pick. Now, I understand the context of where the pick was coming from. No Genti on the board. The top tackles were taken. But I think that Tyler Warren was the clear option here. I think that was like the easy pick. I think Colston Loveland's actually my number 3 tight end in this entire draft. I don't think he's bad at all. I just don't think he warrants that top 10 pick. And like I said, with how balanced this draft was, it's hard to find true losers. So the Bears being a loser in this situation doesn't mean that it's a terrible draft pick. I just think there were slightly better options, which is going to be a theme throughout this video. He's got quick feet, strong hands, and he was a really solid receiving threat until an injury sidelined him last fall. And he's definitely a physical player, but he's a better blocker when hitting second-level targets. And that scares me in the NFL because you got to be able to deal with some of the biggest, baddest, and the best edges and tackles and linebackers coming your way. Now, again, understand where the pick was coming from. Definitely looking for another pass catcher for Caleb Williams after they spent all offseason gearing up his line. But I think that Tyler Warren was just simply the better option. I don't love his footwork getting into breaks. I think he's got an average strength for contested catches, and especially with him being a tight end, you want to see, way more power in his contested catches, especially playing at the NFL level now where everyone's going to be, 10 times stronger. And I just don't think that he is the most complete prospect, and I'm a little concerned with injuries with him. He's not a super injury-prone player, but bigger guys like that can be really scary with injuries, and I know he missed time in 2024. I definitely think he'll be a solid tight end, but I think there were better options available on the board for the Bears. Obviously, I think Tyler Warren was the better pick, and I think that there was, a variety of other positions that they could have even gone for besides grabbing Colston Loveland. But I understand the pick. I just don't think it's the right one, and that is why they are a loser for 2025 draft day one. Now, next on my list, ladies and gentlemen, is who I think is the biggest reach of the draft so far, and I'm talking about Shemar Stewart from Texas A&M going to the Bengals. Now, at round 1, pick 17, Shemar Stewart seems like a crazy genetic athletic freak for the Bengals, and especially with the possible loss of Trey Hendrickson and, definitely need of more defensive love for Joe Burrow to actually not have to drop 50 points a game to win a game. I understand why you went edge. With a similar case to the Bears right now, I think that it was a right position, wrong player. I am terrified by Shemar Stewart's production, and I understand that he is an athletic freak, but we've seen athletic freaks before, but none with as low of a production as Shemar Stewart. His production was honestly horrible, and I mean that sack-wise. I mean, his inability to get to the quarterback, yes, he created pressures, and yes, he was decent in the run game, but his inability to actually get to the quarterback and finish sacks was honestly terrifying for me. He, in his 3 combined years with Texas A&M, was able to sack the quarterback 4.5 times, and now he's coming in, and he's being expected to take over for a premier pass rusher in Trey Hendrickson. And obviously, he is huge. He's got length, explosiveness, great first burst step, and he is got great drive. He's an incredibly strong and fast player. Can turn, flatten the edge, really chase down that passer, but he just has no clear production. And if that's coaching, if that was the system, I don't really know. But he's a little sloppy with his pass rushing game. His pass rushing moves are not where I want to see them. And yes, that is a very coachable thing. But 4.5 sacks in 3 years of college is not what you want to see. Yes, he rushes the passer with intensity, but there can be a lack of plan and focus. He gets a little excited. His hand usage in both phases is just not. It's not ideal. I don't think he uses his hands a lot. And honestly, his NFL comp is nowhere near impressive in Roy Robertson Harris. But I don't think Shamar Stewart will be a terrible player, but I don't see long-term production out of him, which is what the Bengals need at this position. I think that he could, really develop into something nice, but we've seen these developmental edges get taken and just flop really hard. Marcus Davenport, I think of like a Vic Beasley, who did, yes, have one really, really good season, but then just fell off of a cliff. I get scared with prospects like this, and obviously the Bengals see something true in him, and they think that he is somebody that could become their newer Treyer Hendrickson, but I don't see that out of them. And this makes me think that the Bengals are one of the losers in the day one draft. And if you're thinking of what other options could they have taken here, I mean, honestly, I like Mike Green more than Shamar Stewart. Frankly, I even like Donovan Ezeboroku. I hope I said that right. I definitely didn't. I like him more than Shamar Stewart. I just don't think that this was the best pick for them. I understand getting a pass rusher, but they were just, in my opinion, better pass rushers available that were a lot cleaner than Shamar. Not the right pick to me. I would even argue that James Pierce Jr. is the better pick. I mean, there's a good chance that they were looking for Jalen Walker, who was taken 2 picks prior to him, but still, like I listed 3 other edges who I think were much better options, and I just think Shamar Stewart is a little bit just of an athletic freak, but not an NFL contributor. Now, in the interest of not being biased, I'm going to talk about Washington's pick. Josh Connolly Jr., selected round 1, pick 29 by the Commanders. I think that Josh Connolly Jr. is actually a really good tackle prospect and is going to be a really strong tackle in this draft. I'm just not sure if this was the right pick for Washington, which is why I'm going to list them a loser in this case scenario. I think that Josh Connolly Jr. is a little bit of a developmental prospect who could actually turn into like a really, really be a strong starter for us. But I do kind of wonder where Josh Connolly Jr. would have went in the draft if he had not been selected by Washington here. Would the Chiefs have grabbed him? Would the Chiefs have stayed with Josh Simmons? There's a lot of questions here, but honestly, I feel like the Commanders had bigger needs with like an edge being a bigger need. I would even argue something in the secondary was a bigger need than tackle, but I fully understand why. And if you look at the Commanders' offensive line, it is a little evident. People are acting a little bit more dumb than they should be about it. If you look at the Commanders' left tackle, Laremy Tunsil's obviously set in stone there. It looks like the second-round pick from last year, Brandon Coleman, will be slopping into left guard for us. At center, obviously, Tyler Biadasz. At right guard, it's going to be Sam Cosmi, but Andrew Wiley will be playing there until Sam Cosmi can recover from his torn ACL. And it looks like Josh Connolly Jr. will likely be slotting in at right tackle for us, so it does make sense. It does give us an incredibly strong line. And if you look at all the pass rushers that the Eagles, the Giants, and even the Cowboys have been acclimating this free agency and draft, it makes sense to be getting some help on the line and maximizing, protecting Jaden Daniels and maximizing the longevity of his career. So I get that and I understand that. I just think that this defense really, really needs help. But I also understand that we're not just building ourselves to make the big run next year. We're trying to build ourselves to be like contenders for the next 5 years. And I think that a Josh Connolly pick does do that. But right now I am slotting us in as a loser because honestly, we do need more help on defense right now. And we need more picks for later in the draft. Finally, on this list, I have the Miami Dolphins selection, round 1, pick 13, Kenneth Grant. Now, Kenneth Grant is a strong defensive tackle, and I think that he will be a good contributor in the NFL. I think, like I said, the theme of this draft is you have a lot of like starter caliber players to slightly above average starting caliber players, and that's wonderful. But I don't think Kenneth Grant was the move here. I think there were better defensive tackles still left on the board. He was my number 3rd ranked defensive tackle in this class, and some people don't even have him as like a top 4 defensive tackle in this class, but he is a good player. He's obviously got that big broad chest, and he has very thick and long arms. He can play multiple spots on different fronts. He's dynamic with that. He has a great club strength and knocks blockers off balance. And he had a really solid performance over the upset win over Ohio State, playing against some really high competition. And my issue is though is that he really lacks explosiveness in my opinion. I think that athletically that there is a little bit of a issue here. Issue with the NFL is athleticism is something that's kind of hard to teach. It's sometimes easier to teach players to be smarter than it is to teach them to be more athletic. I think that he has a tough time kind of getting around angle blocks. I don't love his limited range, and I think he was a little inconsistent in my opinion, a little too inconsistent to be going this early on in the draft. I mean, stats were definitely solid from 2024, starting in 12 games, having 6.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and 5 PBUs. You know, he didn't play in the bowl, and he didn't test at the combine, but, sorry, let me rephrase. He did test at the combine. He didn't test extremely well at the combine, in my opinion. I think athletically, you're kind of missing something here. And I don't think his production warranted such a high pick. I think this was definitely a little bit of a reach. But obviously, the Dolphins fell in love with the prospect. There's a reason he was picked here. I just don't think that this was the best pick, especially if you're looking for a D-line, if you were the Dolphins in this position of the draft. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for me. We went over some teams that I think are losers in this draft. And to me, there are no true losers in this draft. I feel like every team had a reason for their pick. And I do understand that. I just, you got to look at the negative because that's how you get clicks and views nowadays, unfortunately, is looking at the negative. So I was trying to look at why these teams were doing this and trying to understand why. And I think I understand why every team made all of these selections. I don't think there were any terrible selections from this first day of NFL drafting. But obviously, we have to look at who are the losers. And these are the teams that I would qualify as the losers. But I still think that all 4 of these players are going to be above average, and I think even Shadur could really work himself out into a nice, decent NFL career. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you like, subscribe, drop a comment. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers, so help us hustle our way there. I'll be more consistent with the uploads, even though I keep saying that, but trust me, I will, especially with draft coming. I love talking about prospects. If you guys want to see a winners of the 2025 NFL draft, please let me know. I'll probably make a video analyzing the second day today of the second and third round, and make sure everybody smoke crack, eat drywall. I'll see you guys again very, very soon.